call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission. We'll have a couple of notes here. Please turn off your cell phones. If you need to take a call, take it outside. And let's just be courteous with each other during the public hearing portions of the meeting. First order on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for July 10th. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Weston.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Carolyn. Andreas?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Amy, are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Yes.
Sarah?
Abstain.
Weston?
Yes.
And Matt?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. The chair has nothing to report. Does the vice chair have anything to report?
Nothing today.
And Nick, director's report.
So the only thing I have is to recognize Clark for all of his service and 8 years. 8 years as a planning commissioner. For those that didn't know, Clark's time expired, and he also moved out of the city. So at the same time as his
Did not try, but that's how it all happened.
tenure expired. So we have a couple of things for him. One is, as is custom, we have a gift that commemorates his tenure and dedication to the city, and we also have a letter recognizing him from the mayor for his service. So
So much.
I'm gonna hand these to you now. Thanks, Clark.
Thank you,
Feel
Clark.
free to
Yeah, I
say a
just
few words if you want. We'll clap now.
it's been a privilege to show up here twice a month and participate, and I've really learned a lot. When I started, I was like a year out of grad school and eager to make a change in the world, right? And now I'm 8 years later. I think you see things a little more clearly, and you don't want to change things so much, but it's been a great opportunity. I really appreciate the relationships and things I've learned from each and every one of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here for us.
I'd like to say thanks. It's really been enjoyable having you on the commission. Every time you've been here, you've added great insights and you've taught me a lot. So thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you.
I do would like to say thank you, Clark. I remember when I started, when I was new here, and he was one of the seniors back then, and he really made some really good, insightful comments that I learned from, and I'm sure many commissioners as well. So thank you for your inputs.
Thank you. All right, guys.
We wish you well.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our first item on the agenda, an ADU at approximately 1978 South Windsor Street. Eric?
Good evening. So the item before you is for an ADU in a single-family zone, so it's a conditional use, and it's at 1978 Windsor. Mr. Dwight Yee is going to talk a little bit about it, but basically what we're looking at here is this would be a structure built behind a single-family home. You see here, it would contain a detached garage for the home, two-car detached garage with a one-bedroom ADU over the top. As we look at it, it's set 10 feet from the property lines, which allows it to do a couple things. One, it allows, for example, the door to face towards the rear of the property, and then also with the height of the house and the larger setbacks, it's allowed to be a little taller, so it's proposed as 20 feet tall versus the house, which is 20 feet 8 inches. And that's a rendering of it there, but we found that it meets the standards of the conditional use as outlined in the standards for the ADU without additional concern on our part, and recommend approval. But I'll let Mr. Yee talk a little bit about it here, what he's proposing.
Introduce yourself into the mic.
Okay. My name is Dwight Yee. I'm an architect with the firm Process Studio, and I'm representing Joey Wolf, who is the owner of 1978 Windsor Street. He approached us asking to create both an accessory building, which would house a 2-car garage, and if we could, with the new ADU guidelines, create a second floor accessory dwelling unit. So what we've done is we've kind of created this 2-story structure in the back. It's centered pretty much in the middle of his property. And the way we kind of worked with the setbacks is that the garage footprint is slightly larger to accommodate the 2-car garage. And the upstairs ADU is actually pulled in, so it meets those 10-foot setbacks on all 3 sides, the rear and the 2 side property lines. So as you can see, the section, by allowing us to kind of pull back, then we can use the ADU guideline that says that if we are within 10 or beyond 10 feet of the property lines, we can actually meet the height of the existing residence, which allows us the floor height we need for a 2nd-story ADU. We are going with a flat roof design to maximize the ceiling height because his house is only 20 foot 8 inches, and the maximum height for a flat roof building is 20 feet in this zone. And those are the floor plans. As you can see, what we're proposing is for him, he will have a 2-car garage. In the 10-foot setback on the south of the property will be kind of an extended driveway, and that will be a off-street parking space for the ADU. There will be an entrance off of that side that we'll walk up, and then the upper floor is a 1-bedroom unit. Are there any questions?
Say questions for staff, the applicant? I don't think we have any right now, so if you guys will step back, we'll open the public meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone from the community council here? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring staff back and Mr. Yee back. Any questions, concerns from the commission?
What's the siding made of?
The siding?
Yeah.
It's we're proposing right now to be probably a cement board, a painted hardy siding.
Any questions, concerns? Somebody ready to make a motion? You have a comment, Amy? Okay.
Well, I think there are some concerns with the ordinance and how it's producing accessory dwelling units that are all very similar, and they're very dissimilar to the neighborhoods in which they're located, which I'm not arguing for or against. I think that's just something that the city may want to take a look at to see if we're achieving the intent of the goal to provide affordable housing, but also have it fit in more flexible ways with the existing neighborhoods. But with that, I'm ready to make a motion.
Thank you.
Based on the information and the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use for PLN PCM 2019-00312, detached ADU-1978 Windsor Street.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Andreas,
Yay.
Adrian,
Yes.
Amy,
I'm going to echo what Adrian said. It's really hard to feel good about saying yes when these ADUs look so uninhabitable and we're producing these boxes and thinking that it's okay to have people live in them and they don't fit the neighborhood. So I hope that there's something that planning can do to maybe try to address that design guideline, because these last two have really been unattractive. But I'll vote yes, but I may not continue to do that in the future.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Weston,
I have similar concerns to what's been brought up, and I don't know. I mean, the one component of this that gives me pause is its compatibility with the neighborhood, and I think that's something that we probably could consider, but that's very squishy because there are things in the neighborhood that you could point to set a different tone than the one-story bungalow. So I'll vote yes.
and Matt.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries and your conditional use is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is an overheight fence special exception at 1538 South, 700 East. Chrissy.
Okay, hi. So this is a request from the homeowners at 1538 South, 700 East for a special exception to construct an overheight fence in the front yard. Walls and fences are allowed to be 4 feet in height in the front yard, and that is to the front facade of the home. And then beyond that, in the side yards, they're allowed to be 6 feet in height. The ordinance does allow for a special exception where you can request additional height for fences and walls. They may be granted if they meet all of the standards and if they don't have any negative impacts on the established character of the neighborhood, streetscape, maintenance of public and private views, and matters of public safety. And so staff is recommending denial on this application, and I will go through those reasons in a minute. So this application has been elevated to the Planning Commission as the proposal does not meet all of the standards for an overheight fence for a special exception as described in attachment E of your staff report. In addition, the property is somewhat unique in that it's a duplex with 2 front yards, as well as its unique situation on and context on 700 East. So it's just a little bit different than what you'd see in a normal neighborhood, which is why it was elevated to your review, and the Planning Commission has final decision-making authority for special exceptions. So as you can see on the on the site plan, there we go. So the main home is right here. This is the house, and then the fence is proposed to start at the north facade and then come along to the sidewalk where it curves and then comes over to the south by the driveway and then back towards the home. The fence it would be about 51 feet in length, and it's proposed as a gabion wall, which I'll show some images of on the next slide. You can see on these down graphics here that they are proposing a stepped back design. So the bottom would be a little bit thicker. It'd be 2 feet wide, and then it goes to 1 foot on the top of the design. The applicant originally requested a 7-foot tall fence, but they modified their plans to 5 feet 11 inches. So these drawings show 7 feet, but they are actually asking for 5 feet 11 inches. And then just some context of what gabion walls are. They are typically a cage with rocks in them. The applicant provided information on how they're a more aesthetically pleasing and attractive option to a sound wall, but they achieve the same goals as a sound wall, which is why they chose a gabion wall instead. And then just some context of the site. We're on 700 East here, and then north of the site by a couple blocks is Liberty Park, and then south off the screen is Hawthorne Elementary School. The proposal is in an R15,000 zoning district, and the surrounding land uses are all single family besides the two that I mentioned. There are some two-family buildings, duplexes mixed in there, but the zone is largely R15,000 surrounding the property. And then some site photos. This is the subject property. This is the front yard where they are proposing the fence, and it would come along here, along the sidewalk, and then come back. And then some context photos for the adjacent properties. This is the property to the south, where they do have this green buffer along 700 East. This is their backyard, and then their front yard faces the other street right there. And then this is the property directly adjacent to the north. As you can see, they have a driveway that abuts the property, and then there are two more homes directly to the north.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you know how wide the sidewalk is on that part of 7th East in front of their house?
I'm not sure of the exact measurements, no. So for special exceptions, they must meet all of the standards of the ordinance. So the special exception chapter has the general standards, and as well as what they're requesting specific standards. And you can see there's 8 specific standards that must be met if they're requesting a special exception. And we can go through those, but the applicant is definitely meeting standard E, where their main issues are traffic, noise, pollution. They've had issues with trespassing and then privacy concerns, which is why they're making this request, and that does meet standard E. But staff were just concerned that it's not meeting a few of the standards, which in particular, standard F, which is keeping with the character of the neighborhood and design of the city, and then particularly avoiding a Walden effect in the front yard. For community character, when people are walking down the sidewalk, generally they want to have open views of front lawns in and out. That's a part of the community character of the neighborhood, and the Central City Master Plan doesn't foresee any changes to single-family residential in that neighborhood, so staff believes that it's important to preserve that character along the street. And then, so as far as the public process, initial notifications for the special exception were sent out in May, and we heard from 2 property owners nearby. They called and sent emails, which are included in your staff report. And then when this was elevated to the Planning Commission, additional notice was sent out, and we heard from several more residents. Those are in your staff report, but 3 additional comments were received after your report was published that are included in the Dropbox account. Generally, the concerns had to do with character, safety. There was 1 comment that was in support of the proposal, and the rest were generally against it. I did want to mention that you'll notice in the comments that there were some concerns brought up about an Airbnb use. That would be an enforcement case, and that's a separate matter than this issue, but we are aware, and it was brought up in the public comments. So just staff is recommending denial because it doesn't meet the standards, and it must meet the standards for approval. And so based on our recommendation, that's where we're at.
Questions for Chrissy right now? Is your applicant here?
Yes, and they have a presentation as well that I'll pull up.
We'll invite the applicant up. If you, hand it to Paul over there and.
Oh, I got it. Let's see.
So are you looking for a slideshow as part of their presentation?
And now it's on mine, but it's not on. Technical difficulties as usual. There we go. Okay, and I can control this when you want me to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, you need to introduce yourselves into the microphone, speak into the microphone so that it's all part of the public record, and you will have 10 minutes.
My name is Heidi Kramer. I'm the property owner.
My name is Walter Kazmarzik, and I'm a property owner, the property owner as well.
What we'd like to point out here is the 4 houses that face 700 East between 13th and 17th. They're the only 4 houses on this side of the street. One is a 4-plex, and the other 3 are duplexes. So all the properties are rental properties on this side of the street. If you look at the roof lines, all the roof lines are oriented east to west. Our roof line, which is in yellow, is oriented north to south. So 97 years ago, when this house was built, it was built as a duplex. It was centered on the lot, facing the other way. So 1 yard was in the back, 1 yard is in the front. So parking and yard for each unit, one is in the front, one is in the back. It's access from the front, it's access from the back. It's completely different than the other 3 properties. It's also an improved property, and we have improved the neighborhood. We'll continue to improve the neighborhood. All the properties are not improved, and I think we need to protect this property. And I'm afraid if we don't, we're going to lose them all. And you see what happens to little houses that are displaced because of traffic. 700 East wasn't what it was 97 years ago. These houses will be displaced. I would imagine they'll get knocked down at some point and something new will be built, or we're going to protect these houses. And we've invested in this property. We've invested in the neighborhood. We live 9/10 from this house, 9/10 of a mile from this house for 27 years. We have purchased this as a piece of our retirement. We want to downsize, live in one side, rent the other side to supplement our retirement income. We've been at this for 2.5 years. We are kind of shocked by some of the comments from our neighbors that we don't know, have never met. All but 2 are renters, 2 are homeowners, 1 approves, 1 does not approve. We had no information about the phone calls or whatever you received after the fact. I know you all drove by today, and I hope you got a flavor. It was very quickly. We were there waiting for you all to get a flavor in the character of the neighborhood, because the character of the neighborhood is that it's an expressway. 47,000 cars a day travel by our house. That's 17 million cars a year. And we're asking for some kind of protection, mitigation of road noise, pollution, safety. You cannot sit in the front yard and have a glass of wine. Can't do that because you can't hear each other talking. When we've had tenants and they put a barbecue out front, a potted plant, it's stolen. If we could show some of the, maybe these blink slides here. This is just from this week. So this is 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody going down our driveway. And if we could go to the next one. This is it Saturday, 2:11 in the afternoon. Somebody's doing something on our driveway. We normally get 2 to 3 of these a week. We'd like to protect ourselves a little bit better. We believe in these 4 houses. We believe in this neighborhood.
Can I interject here?
Please.
We had, we've been working in the area for 27 years, like we said. You know, we've invested in this neighborhood. I had a work trailer in the driveway, and it was stolen. And we were downstairs, staying the night downstairs. Stolen. So there's $20,000 of our family history of work is just stolen. So, I mean, this is pretty tough for us. That was a big hit. And we're just trying to protect our investment. We're trying to beautify the property, trying to enhance it. The alley in the back, we've spent a lot of time trying to clean that up. We've been working with the health department, Laura with health department. We're working with Dave in engineering, David Jones in engineering, and he's been a great help with cleaning up the trees in the backyard. And nobody neighbors have said any thank you for taking these dangerous trees down or trying to work it or fill the potholes in the back. You know, so we're invested in this whole property and the surrounding alleys, people. You know, if anybody needs help, we would help them. You know, so
We're invested in the neighborhood.
I guess that's our biggest
We're
point.
giving, we're
invested.
not taking. We want to protect our asset.
And we want to feel good. We want to sit out front and enjoy a barbecue. And I don't get why people can look into our private area, you know? I mean, I'm not on display for everybody to look at. That's what it feels like, you're in a fishbowl. So I just would like you guys to really consider everything that we have on the table here. I think Heidi has worked very hard about all the bullet points and everything about that you guys, the issues that you have with our fence. I think we've addressed everything, so.
As good as we
As good as
can.
we can.
And I'm sorry, they do have a police report showing the property damage, but it's not pulling up, but it is in front of me, so they do have one.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Any questions for the applicant?
So I certainly understand the noise, and the privacy sort of questions and topics you're raising. You've mentioned a lot about the driveway and kind of people wandering back that way, and I'm just curious to hear how the wall helps address those issues.
Well, it doesn't address the driveway, does it? But 2 weeks ago, the camera went off. We went down there. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and somebody had moved onto the steps in the driveway. I mean, they had moved in we had been there that morning, a few hours' time. Okay, you're on the driveway. But if you're in the yard where a tenant has maybe their children or their pets or a chaise lounge, and somebody moves in on that, that's very different than somebody trying to move in on your driveway. In my opinion, you're giving some secure, private space to someone. We can't secure the entire property. We can't stop people walking up and down our driveway. But that's an indication of the type of people that are walking in our neighborhood. It's not, people aren't walking down 700 East walking their dogs so much. I mean, they do. I know some people that do. Mostly, it's transient people using 7th as an artery between 13th and 17th. So we can't protect it all, but we can give some protective space, some sense of safety and security.
Is that area that you're fencing off, is
I'm sorry?
the area that's being fenced, it's not fully enclosed based on the drawings that I'm seeing?
It's not fully, well,
One
one side.
It goes to the driveway. It returns back from the front on an angle, which gives you the site view, whatever that's called.
Put a gate there into
And
the yard.
there would be a gate going into the steps. So you come out the front apartment, go down the steps, and you'd be in your yard. Maybe
So-
at some point, we could put a wrought iron fence in the driveway, so we could have that enclosed at some point.
Do you see that?
Yeah, but I mean, I would, if you're worried about people wandering in, you're gonna put up a 6-foot wall. It doesn't seem like security is necessarily increased for the property.
Okay.
Why it's an open.
The reason for the 6-foot wall is for sound from the traffic, from the
Yeah, I
47,000
and
cars.
I understand this.
Okay, and so a sound wall is only as good as the height that it is. So that's why initially we asked for 7. We met with,
John and
thank you so
and
much.
Chrissy.
Thank you. And we came to the conclusion that 7 foot was fantasy land. So we're like, okay, let's go
Yeah,
to 6.
I understand the sound.
Let's go to 6.
I'm just
So-
trying to get the safety argument.
And we're here to collaborate. We're hoping with you guys. We're open. We really want to protect our house and our property, and we would like to have quality tenants.
And we're looking for solutions here. We're not just looking for.
Yeah, this is what we want.
We're
No.
looking for a plan, so we can move forward as well.
There's a lot of illegal
But I
fences
think what would
also on
happen-
700 East, and we don't want to go that route, okay? We want to be upfront, we want to be legal, okay? We need a 6-foot fence. We're here putting the time and the effort and asking you
Right.
for that 6-foot fence. We know legally we can build this whole thing to 4 feet. We know we can do that. We're asking for 2 more feet.
Okay, any other questions from the commission?
Really, no questions?
No questions right now, so I'll ask you to step back, Chrissy to step back, and we'll do the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the community council? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this topic? Okay, sir, come on up. You'll need to speak into the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Horrocks. I'm the property owner next door, 1530 South on 700 East, just the one to the north. They're incorrect. My home is not a duplex. My family lives there. I have 2 children under 3. But I disagree on several of these points. The sound, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous at times when you get Harley Davidsons flooring it down the street, but my wife and I garden out front a good portion of the time. My main issue is the safety. I took a picture this morning. I don't know if I can hand this around, but I don't have enough for everyone, but it's just either way, if I'm pulling forward or pulling out of my driveway, they've put a fence, which I don't know if you need a permit, but I don't know if it's up to code either, but the fence itself obstructs the view pulling out of my driveway quite substantially. And then I've kind of drawn where the wall will be, and it's gonna completely block the view. We have a neighbor, like a 10-year-old boy who scooters back and forth, and we won't be able to see him. We've got those electric scooters that can go 15 miles an hour. We got bikes, they're gonna be flying back and forth. No matter how careful we are, we won't be able to see until our car is halfway into the road, or not halfway into the road, halfway across the sidewalk. And no matter how careful we are, they can plow into the side of our car. Another thing is the sidewalk after their house, it cuts in a full, I think if the sidewalk's 4 feet, then it cuts in 4 feet. So it's gonna completely block the view of the entire sidewalk after this, the 1538s, after their property, it's gonna completely block the view. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to submit that picture, we can add it to
Okay,
the
thank you.
record. You can just bring it up and hand it. We can
Yeah, just
pass
give it to
around.
Nick and he'll,
Email?
no,
Just hand it-
just hand it
yeah.
to him, and it'll become part of the public record.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, or do I go ahead and sit down?
I think we're.
Actually, I have a
think-
question, Madam Chair. How long have you been living in the area?
I've been living there for 5 years. They talk about the sound, and it makes the property difficult to rent. I rent out a portion of my home as an ADU, and I've never had any complaints about sound. We've never had any security issues. We've never had theft. I've never seen transients, really. We've seen a lot of dog walkers on our road.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Step back. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Come on up, state your name into the microphone for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Sorry, a little nervous.
Your name, please.
Millie Pichardo, and I have been renting for 9 years, 2 houses down, so I'm on 24. I have the 9-year-old boy that scooters there. We have not had any problems with transients. I submitted pictures over email. I just want to say that it's really hard to hear people put down 700 East a lot, because it's actually a really nice, friendly neighborhood. If you guys drove by, you could see that people really care about their homes and really go out of our ways to make sure that it's mowed. I rent there, but I do all of the flowers. I plant every year. I water every night. I sit out and have a glass of wine happily. Most of the people that do walk by our house are coming to jog to the park. I have a lot of fun because I'm there with my hose, and we have a couple of regular runners that come by in the summer, and they're like, "Oh, can you hose me down, please?" Because it's really hot.
Take a deep breath. It's okay.
I have no plans on moving from 700 East. I really love living there. I can't imagine why you would want to put a wall that big in front of the property. I also like to comment that recently there were 3 big pine trees that were planted there, and they were just got taken out of the 1538 property. It's almost like trying extra hard to make it look as ugly as possible. If you want to talk about beautifying the neighborhood and caring about the 4 houses, building a wall across that property doesn't really seem like how to do what you're saying. So.
That's your 2 minutes. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Do we need to have the applicant come back, the staff?
Generally, you give the applicant an opportunity to respond to any comments, so.
Okay, applicant, Chrissy, would you come back up?
Jordan, I'd like to respond to you. If you look at attachment E in the staff report, Michael Berry from Transportation states, it appears that the wall complies with the 10-foot site distance requirement. This has passed engineering completely.
I need you to speak into the microphone.
It's completely safe. I'm sorry. It's past engineering. We've gone down and talked to the building services.
Okay.
So it meets everything it's supposed to meet. As far as cutting down 3 trees, when we purchased the property, we removed 3 dangerous trees between Jordan's house and our house, and we have planted 11 trees.
We planted 14 trees.
Sorry, go ahead.
On the property.
In total.
We took the trees that she said we cut down, and we put them in the backyard. So we have other plans.
There are 14 trees?
We planted 14 trees on the property. There were 4 trees on the property when we got there that were dangerous, and we had them cut down and removed.
They adjoined our neighbor's property, Jordan, and we asked if he'd like to share in the cost of that or in the new fence between our 2 properties, and Jordan declined.
He said this is not his responsibility.
Not his responsibility.
When we first met him. So he wasn't very approachable.
He's kept that up.
As far as sharing. I mean, if you have a neighbor, you want to share the costs or talk about it or do some work, help. There was no help at all towards him. He just didn't have nothing to do with it, and I just can't understand why. So we kept trying to build a fence to get our privacy. And now he enjoys the fence that we built because he has espalier trees up in there, but he's not grateful at all for that we helped improve his property as well.
Or removing the dangerous trees in the neighborhood.
Or removing the trees and whatnot.
That were
So
over
that's
his
kind of-
property primarily.
Okay,
Can I
we're
speak
not
to
here,
this
we're not
on-
here
Oh, no, I know,
It's
I
sad.
know.
to take care
It's
of neighbor
sad.
disputes.
Right,
That's-
but I want to
that's
say to
not-
Millie, I'm really
It's not a
sorry.
petty dispute. We're clarifying the comments that he
Right.
made.
So we're trying to stick to what the standards are here, and that has nothing to do with issues with neighbors.
Oh, I thought we were just brought up here to clarify what was said.
Right. The commission only has authority to deal with what the standards are.
Okay,
So
fine.
let's stick with that.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry if we drifted, but we are emotional as well about this and invested.
Are
Investment.
there any other questions from the commission for the applicant?
I have a question for Christina. So on the property to the south, what is the that green buffer? How wide does that measure?
I don't know the exact distance that it measures. It varies along 700 East. You'll notice if you drive along, it goes in and out on different properties.
Yeah, I was specifically looking at the south, the house directly adjacent to the south, with that green buffer, and then their 6-foot tall fence because that's their backyard. I was just wondering, what is the distance of that buffer?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I'd assume it's probably 7 or 8 feet.
Oh, it's plus our property. It's our property plus. It goes back another 6 or 7 feet from that, so maybe it's 35 feet.
If I can answer your question too, Amy,
I'm sorry, I'm specifically just talking about
okay.
the side that is
This one.
adjacent to the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the fence. How wide is that? It looks like 6, 7 feet. Okay.
Where are you talking about? From
It's-
that
it's a-
fence to the sidewalk?
the face of the fence?
No. how wide the grass space is between
your-
the
the adjacent
sidewalk and the
property, not your
fence. On
property.
the adjacent property, not on your
understand.
property.
I understand that.
Yeah, and
It's not 7 feet.
I think it varies. It's narrow and then it comes up, so probably it could go up to 12 feet or even more. So, but it's narrower as you get south.
It shows on the drawings that we did.
Your neighbor's property.
Any more questions?
There's no confusion as to the front and the backyard or anything on this property, is there? I mean, the front is what is facing 7th East.
Yeah, so even though their situation is unique that it's a duplex, by our code, that is the front yard.
Okay.
Any more questions for the applicant? Any discussion among the commission members? Are we ready for a motion? Anyone?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Matt.
You know, I guess based on the findings listed in the staff report and the information presented and the input received during the public hearing, I move the Planning Commission deny the special exception request PLN PCM 2019-0428 for an overheight fence in the front yard.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Weston. Do we need any discussion?
So I'm just curious if there was an acceptable setback that people might feel could be appropriate, so it wasn't fully along the sidewalk line.
It's 2 feet back the way it is now.
I'm sorry, your time to comments passed.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm just trying to solicit some discussion among the commissioners to
We're new at this.
vet where
you know,
they're
so
at.
I
This is our
apologize.
first time here.
I know.
You're doing great.
You're
Sorry.
doing fine. So I just wanted to put that out there and kind of try to see what other commissioners think about that possibility.
Amy, I'm just concerned of the precedent that it would set along 7th East. I think that if we start allowing tall fences and walls to be put along 7th East, it's going to dramatically change the character of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Do you think there's an acceptable distance
But even
buffer
if,
where that?
I mean, that was my, I mean, I understand and appreciate the, you know, the desire for some sound sort of barriers and stuff, but I also, you'll end up, why wouldn't we put a sound barrier along any house along 7th East? And then everyone is going to put up, even if maybe it's 4 feet, 6 feet back, wherever it is, but we end up with sound barriers on front of all these houses that go up and down that are kind of ad hoc put in, and I just think that you do end up with that caned effect. That's why the code is written the way it is and why the standard applies. And so, you know, the house to the side is is one of those corner lots, and we've talked about those corner lots, and because you live in a corner lot, you get to choose which side's your front or backyard, and it kind of applies, you know, that I don't think that the corner lots apply here, and I just think, yeah, with the precedent you set with having potential walls up and down is why I was willing to make the motion.
I don't think there's anything stopping them from doing a 4-foot fence and then a vegetative buffer inside it. I mean, you'll get the screening effect. That won't create a wall.
Are we ready to vote? Andreas?
I vote yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Sarah?
Yes.
Weston?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Had me confused there. by
Yeah,
saying
say
yes.
yes.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to the third item on our agenda is the MACU commercial parking lot conditional use at 1225 South Redwood Road. Nanette.
Thank you, Chairperson. So this request is for a commercial parking lot for a new Mountain America Credit Union located at 1225 South Redwood Road. The property is in a corridor commercial zoning district, and within this zoning district, a commercial parking lot is a conditional use. The previous use was also a financial institution with 3 drive-through bays and 25 parking stalls. And there's also an existing telecommunication tower that's located on the southeast corner of the lot. This proposal is to create 39 stalls on the site. In the off-street parking standards in the city code, there's a maximum number of parking stalls allowed. And for a financial institution with the square footage that the applicant is proposing, that maximum number of stalls is 10. The commercial parking lot will hold the remaining 29 stalls. All of those proposed stalls will be located to the back of the building and away from the street. The commercial parking stalls, or the commercial parking lot stalls, and the required parking stalls will be separated by landscaping, but the overall circulation and function of the parking lot will act as a single lot. Landscaping, the applicant has provided landscaping on the commercial parking lot that will exceed the minimum standards. Generally, the minimum interior parking lot landscaping is 5% that we require. The proposal will include 20% interior parking lot landscaping. And the buffer area to the east of the property that's adjoining a single-family residential neighborhood, generally that buffer is 7 feet and with at least a 4-foot tall fence. The applicant is proposing a 17-foot buffer with a 6-foot tall solid vinyl fence. All of the landscaping and commercial parking lot standards are meeting city code requirements, as can be found on attachment F of the staff report. And because the application is meeting all of the standards for the conditional use, and it's generally meeting the intent of the zoning district, staff is recommending the Planning Commission approve the conditional use with the 2 conditions listed in the staff report.
Any questions right now?
So what is making this a commercial parking lot? I mean, are they leasing it out to third parties to park there, or is it really just supporting the credit union and its reconfigured design?
That's something that you'll need to ask the applicant for or about.
But what's the
I would
what
imagine
requirement for this is there on the city to determine whether it's a commercial parking lot versus off-site parking in support of the existing use?
As soon as it's a commercial parking lot, then it's in a conditional use. So if they exceed the 10 stalls, then unless they go through a conditional use, they can't exceed the 10 stall maximum.
But there's not a separate use component to that in the code to define a commercial parking lot versus off-street?
Yeah, there is. So the commercial parking lot definition basically is a surface lot where the public can park for some charge.
Okay.
That's what makes it a surface parking lot. Or a commercial parking lot.
That's their intent as part of this application? Well, we'll hear from them on that, but that's your understanding. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Nanette? Is your applicant here?
Yes.
Come up and introduce yourself.
Hey Marlene, is there a way for him to plug in his laptop so that...
I've got a HDMI, if I could just plug in.
Is that okay?
Is that an HDMI?
No.
It would need to be in place of that adapter.
That won't go into here?
It will, but it doesn't connect to
It
those.
won't connect.
No. No, for some reason.
Okay. Well, we'll try and get through this without that. We'll just go. We'll see if we can explain it without the image.
Okay, if you would please introduce yourself for
Yes.
the record.
Shane Sanders, Sanders and Associate Architects, representing Mountain America Credit Union. Just want to give you a little history of this location. Mountain America Credit Union acquired this branch in 2001 in a merger with another financial institution. So it's an older building that they acquired. It's old and antiquated. They've outgrown it. Since that merger, this particular location has become one of their top producers. It's in the top 3 as far as monthly transactions. So there's a lot of traffic that comes to this location. The image I was going to show you is of the existing site. And as she mentioned, there's 25 existing parking stalls. They'll get people parking in the drives, and they have more than probably the 30, what was it, the total, the 39 parking stalls we're asking for, multiple times a week during busy times. When we met with the city, the plan here is to demolish the building, build a new branch that can kind of meet their present needs in providing services to the members. They presently have 25 stalls. The parking ordinance now would only allow 10. And meeting in the DRT, this was the only recommendation that they could give us to get our numbers up to where we need them, to meet the existing need, was to ask for commercial parking. So it'll only be used by the credit union. There's no intent to rent or lease these parking stalls. It was the only means that the DRT committee could see that we could achieve the necessary stalls they need to do business. And we're not going to, there's not going to be any more parking or any more traffic than they already have. We're just providing those stalls that they need with this new facility. So we don't have people parking in the drives. And I had some pictures here showing those situations, but I can't get that to come up on the screen. So yes, we're asking for this commercial parking so we can have the 39 stalls that we need to do business. And we've done things to improve this site. As mentioned with the landscaping, we've created a dense buffer between the residential to the east. They've made a large investment in the landscaping on this new project. Presently, and if you toured the site, that east portion is undeveloped. When they bought that, it was undeveloped. It's just weeds. There's probably a 50-foot area on the east side that is just weeds. That will be now parking and landscaping.
So you're going to take that entire parcel and put asphalt on the majority of it?
No. We've exceeded, we've got 20% of that site is landscaping.
So I'm looking at the aerial in our staff report. And I can see the undeveloped land to the east, and it looks fairly substantial. You're going to move the building up to the sidewalk, but then the rest of this parcel is mostly going to be asphalt?
Correct. I mean, to get the 39 parking stalls that they presently are getting cars coming in there and parking, yes. So we're not really changing the numbers. We're just providing stalls for the present demand. And it would be a much safer situation. They're not parking in the aisles. They get them parking in front of the dumpster in the drive-through, on the periphery of the drive-through. Like I said, it's a very high transaction branch in the top 3 of their organization. So they have a lot of traffic at this location, and we're just trying to provide parking for that traffic. And we've tried to do, I guess, an above-average landscaping plan to create a better environment than's already there, create a very nice buffer to the residents behind them with trees, dense trees along that property line. They're going to provide a new fence around the cell tower that is not chain link, it's presently chain link. They're going to do a decorative fence around that.
Any other questions for the applicant? No one? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Step back, be prepared for more questions later. I will open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone from the community council here? Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Okay, you can come up, speak your name in the microphone, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Silvio Campos. I live in the property on the east side, one of the properties on the east side of the proposal constructions. I wonder about the proposal construction there. There's a, how you call that place where the rainwater goes before go to the drains. It's on the south side of the proposal now. Sorry, to the architect. Who is you? So how you call the place where the water goes? The rainwater goes until go to the storm.
Sir?
How do you call that?
Sir, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. I was asking where's the called the place where the water is held
Like the
before go to the
retention,
drains?
like a retention
Oh, that's
pond?
the name, the retention
okay.
pond.
Okay.
Because in the actual property, there's two retention ponds, one of the south, like the one showing on the proposal, in the same site like that, but it's one of the north. The property will have more water to retain after the rains before go to the drains. And I suppose they do the research about that. I wonder whether this is the same, less than the retaining place for waters, with a more large asphalted and builded property. And also I want to be clear about how tall will be the buffer on the east side of the proposal, because that's where my house is. And then I wonder, it's not only about the traffic, it's about the noise and the heat on the summer, coming from the asphalt and all the construction. How long it will take to do that, and then how much, how is it gonna build everything in and then build that?
Okay, we'll ask.
Sorry.
We can ask them
okay,
later.
thank you. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Come up, state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
I'm Florencia Campos Ypura. I'm Silvio's daughter. All of our family lives in the house right on the northeast corner. We share a fence with that lot. As my father was saying, there are two drainage, retainage areas for drainage. We are just a few blocks from the Jordan River. So that area is surrounded. My house is here, the lot is here, and then there's Redwood Road. On the other side of that, the river flows, as well as along several blocks east, where there's the trail, the Jordan River Trail. So that's definitely a concern for me as well. We are 5 that live in that house. And all of the families that live there, there's about 4 houses. They all do have at least 4 people in each home. That's also a concern for them. As my dad and father was saying, the buffer between our fence and where the asphalt starts, we would like to clarify where that is. Also, this is a very highly trafficked credit union location. I do wonder how many ATM stalls there will be. It looks like they will have 4. They currently have 1 on the side and 2 in operation on the east side of the building. So just that right, I see that they have added an additional one closer to the street. Often, weekend nights, we see a lot of cars parked there. I see them because that's my window. My window faces that credit union. So that is definitely a concern. As the architect said, it is a highly trafficked location. So I understand they want to serve their customers, but it also means that it's right in my backyard. I do not see any reason to think that this will not increase the traffic of people that drive by closer to my house, and also, of course, that use the credit union services.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Come up, state your name for the record.
My name is Alejandra Maloney, and I'm part of their family. I live in that house as well. And one of my concerns is how long this construction will take, what will be their hours of operation, Monday through Friday, how loud it will be, what type of machinery they'll have. We have an animal, a pet, that likes to go to that part of the lot that doesn't have asphalt. So, and we found him outside, so we can't really make him be an inside cat. So that's one of my concerns. I want to know the hours of operation that they will have, because I want to make him as safe as possible, so I want to keep him inside, at least during the part of the day when it will be doing the construction. So those are my main concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question for,
Yeah.
have you heard anything about this particular project from your neighbors around you?
Honestly, we told our neighbors, and we told them about this today. That's why my entire family is here, and I don't think anybody else is really concerned about it. But we are very concerned about it, and we know. Also, I'm bringing up my cat because I know there's a lot of other cats there, and I am concerned about them as well, too, about the feral cats, because at least I want to keep mine safe, you know.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Have the applicant and Nanette come back up. I think they've raised some questions for you about drainage and water runoff and some construction concerns.
So on the image on the screen, you can see at the bottom of that image, that long linear area, that is the existing retention pond that is depressed into the ground. Presently, there's one that mimics that on the north side. That is going away, and we're putting that retention underground in piping, which is typical. So it's an underground piping that will retain that water, large pipes. And that's how we're making up losing that retention to the north. The ATM, presently there's a canopy, a small structure on the north side that has an ATM in it. We are adding a second ATM, but it's in the drive-up canopy, which is attached to the branch. So off of that new branch to the north, there's a covered canopy. And those first two lanes are ATMs, one in the building, and then one on that first island. The three to the north of that are vat tubes. They had a question on the landscaping between our property and the residents to the east. I think Annette mentioned it's a 17-foot buffer, and then we have planted trees, quite dense, right up against the fence, and then lower planting to the west of that. It's very dense planting buffer between.
And you're going to put a new fence in also,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A solid fence?
The existing will stay, and then we're putting a new one adjacent to it.
Okay.
Yes, it's a 6-foot vinyl fence. Two colors, it's white and tan.
So that landscaping right there is 17 feet wide?
Correct. The length of up to the radar towers. You can see that white box in the bottom corner. That is the radar.
But up to the road circulator situation, it's 17 feet?
Correct.
The narrowest point is.
The narrowest is 17 feet.
At the narrowest point?
Correct. Then on the north end, it would radius out and grow from that. And then it also grows out on the south end of that. But the narrowest point is 17 feet of landscaping. We can restrict construction hours. That hasn't been discussed here, but we'd be happy to do that, restrict hours to 8 to 5 or whatever you might recommend.
Maybe just work with the neighbors. That's
Absolutely.
really not our purview.
Okay, absolutely. I think we will do that. We will restrict working hours on construction, so they're not starting too early. We'll start them at 8, and we can end it at 5, 8 to 5. We've done that before on projects. I'd be happy to do that here.
Any questions for the architect?
Yeah, I have a feeling that this aerial is a little bit out of proportion, so I'm trying to wrap my head around how this is going to lay out. Is the size of the building roughly the same as what you're going to basically take that same square footage, you're just moving it?
The footprint is a little larger in the new building. The existing building has a basement, and that's one of the other drivers in removing this building is it's got a basement. There's a high water table here, and they've had water problems and mold problems in that basement, which has created a bad environment to work in. So overall square footage, it's similar, but the basement is unusable in this existing facility.
So what is the footage of this eastern portion that is currently dirt? Because I think this aerial might be making it look like it's a lot bigger than it is. Because I really dislike such large surfing parking lots. I think we get impermeable surfaces, we get, heat islands, and the thought of like concentrating this parking lot and making it bigger is kind of disconcerting.
Yeah, and I think, we're creating some shade for the neighbors with the trees,
So I
which
just
they
want to
don't have
understand,
now.
do you know how wide that dirt patch actually
Maybe
is?
this can help you. That cell phone tower site is probably 50 by 50.
Correct.
So just kind of
100-ish?
eyeballing it, it's 100 feet.
100 feet, and you're going to take 90, 80, so 83 of that for a parking lot? I just feel like...
Well, but there's 17 feet off the back.
Yeah, so I took 17 feet out, so
So
83 feet of this dirt is going to now be parking lot?
Well, but that it curves out also and goes out around.
For some reason, I just
so-
feel like moving the building up and then concentrating all the parking in the back and taking 83 feet of what I'm seeing on the aerial feels like a huge amount of asphalt.
Maybe I can add a little bit of perspective here. Typically, a drive aisle with parking on both sides is, depending on how wide the stalls are, each stall is usually 20 feet. There's usually, I think, 24 feet of drive aisle and then another 20 feet. So if you add that up, a drive lane in a parking lot is anywhere from, 60 to 70 feet wide. A single, yeah. So
that would be one.
Yeah.
row.
So generally, I'm actually very much in favor of moving buildings closer to sidewalks. I think that's a much better design. But I did respond, or I think one of the comments that one of the neighbors made does concern me in that they have people that are parking there at night, that by putting the parking in the back, how are you going to address lighting in a way to deter? Now they're going to be hidden behind, right? And if this is an area where they're already kind of hanging out and we want to deter that, how are you going to deter that but preserve the privacy from lighting and noise for those neighbors? Because I can see that as an issue if they're already noticing it.
Right. And that's always a sensitive balance, trying to create enough light for security, but not have that trespass onto adjoining properties. The lighting will be better. We're adding new parking lot lights. It is shielded on that east side, so you don't get light trespass. So in the fixture, we shield it so light can't come onto their property. And then I think the trees, that dense row of trees is going to block a lot of that light.
Are you going to have cameras?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
They have cameras at all of their branches, correct?
Do some deterrence? Because I think I'm concerned about that if they already notice people there. Because I do like moving the building up.
I know.
But if it's going to create pockets that are hidden along this road, because it's a highly traveled road, that becomes kind of a attraction for people to do things they shouldn't be doing.
Sure. And they're having that problem now. I know the managers had to run off people that's doing things illegal back there. numerous times a month.
Well, I
So
guess
we're-
I would hope, and this can't be part of our thing, but that the credit union then would maybe have a continuing dialogue with the neighbors of like, are you noticing things? How can we address that better? Safety is, I think, is going to be an issue. Maybe the best intentions of how you design it might not play out, but so you will be doing enough lighting and you'll have cameras.
Correct.
Okay.
Any more questions? Any discussion?
I guess I kind of have just a general question about the philosophy behind setting the max of parking spots for a financial institution at 10. And then to Adrian's question earlier about the commercial lot, and that it's, that was set as a conditional use in this zone. I don't know that that's really what this is being used for. So what we're really allowing is them to have more parking spots, which I think we're pretty critical of when it comes to a lot of things that have come before us. And so I don't know, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around what we're being asked to do, because it feels like we're calling it something it's not. So
So the conditional use would give the applicant an opportunity to use it as a commercial parking lot.
but it's not being used as a commercial parking lot. So is there another way that we, not that I'm saying I'm advocating to do this, but is there another way that we can go over the maximum of parking spots that are allotted for a financial institution?
I believe the commercial parking lot is the only way. And I believe that was the reason why the DRT recommended that the applicant go through
But
this
even if they
process.
put in bike racks and did those other transportation enhancements, they can't get their parking number up.
Unless they go through a commercial parking lot conditional use process.
Because the maximum for financial institutions is fixed and not subject to the other provisions of the code that allow for enhanced parking.
It only allows it up to a certain amount, that increase.
So
And
what does that
because
get?
This is one of the issues we're having with our parking chapter, is that because sometimes the minimums are set so low, and I believe for this type of use, it might be 1 per 1,000 or 2 per 1,000, I can't remember, but the maximum that you can increase that is limited to basically an additional stall and a quarter, stall and a half.
So it's not meaningful.
So it's
given
really
the-
not a meaningful, and that's one of the things that we're trying to actually fix with the parking chapter changes, especially in areas like this context. It's different when we're in, downtown versus out on Redwood Road, but that's the issue that we're having with our parking chapter. In terms of how it's going to be used, for them to be a commercial parking lot, the definition says there has to be some sort of payment form. So if somebody,
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with.
if
This is not
somebody
a
is
commercial parking
not
lot.
doing that, they are not that
They're in
use
violation
anymore.
of their conditional use permit, and that becomes an enforcement issue. If they subdivided it and then put the parking on the new parcel that served the use on the adjacent parcel, then I think you have a better way of saying it's a commercial parking lot.
Yeah, you can. There's other issues there, like creating a lot without street frontage and things like that. But
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
they'd have other issues to consider, but at least in terms of the use, we're not approving something that we know is a fiction.
well,
And I'll say that, that's my
Yeah,
concern.
I mean,
I think
think
the
that's-
application fails on its face because the intent is not to use this as a
I think
commercial
the
parking lot.
applicant said that.
So
that's a problem.
That's where I start and stop.
I mean, in our discussion, the justification was that these members are paying fees. But this was our only means to get parking that we needed.
Nick, are you saying that, I mean, I don't know, I think the conversation has almost ended for me, but are you saying that you're trying to, in the rewrite of the parking code, you're trying to fix this problem so that they would be able to have more parking spots?
I haven't done any kind of calculations on this one.
Okay.
But the one thing that we are trying to fix is that the maximum is no longer a percentage of the minimum, which it is now.
Okay.
That's what's creating the problem. The minimum
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, gotcha.
So there's nothing else, Nick, that is available to the applicant other than a commercial parking lot?
Off my head, I can't think of one. I know that there's a couple of special exceptions that are very decent in the parking chapter. Intended more for dimensional types of things, not numbers. But at this point, I mean, the conditional use.
Exceptions we looked at with staff couldn't get us to where we are now.
How many employees do you are working out of here on a daily basis?
They typically have about 9 in a branch. So all of the stalls would be used by employees, leaving none for members with the current ordinance.
Do they need to, if you have a commercial parking lot, do all spots need to be paid for? Or do you need to be paying for all spots? Can you charge your employees a daily rate? That's arbitrary or? Does a commercial parking lot need to have need to be open to like general public use, or can you have a commercial park? Can you, as a commercial parking lot owner, define I'm only letting people associated with a certain business?
The definition said that they're generally open to the So it could be something where
So not members.
I'm pretty sure that one can probably go into the credit union.
Become a
whether they're
member?
Or not, right? I mean, that's kind of how they work. But.
Yeah.
Oh.
Does somebody want to try a motion here?
And there's nothing with a plan development or anything that's sort of no, that deals with parking.
I'm not sure we heard you, Matt. That's okay.
The plan development section doesn't deal with parking, right?
It's hard to justify the benefit of that, right? You have to meet one of those plan development objectives in order to just qualify to be a plan development, and those are usually some sort of public type of benefit. So. I think it's important to note that the role of a conditional use is a use that may have some sort of detrimental or increased impact above what is permitted. And we can speculate on how it might be used, but we don't know that, right? We have to, if somebody gets approved for a conditional use, which we're obligated to do unless there is a detrimental impact that can't be reasonably mitigated. The mechanism to deal with that is an enforcement action down the road. And so if it comes out that this is approved and there's not a commercial function to it, then the obligation is on the city to enforce our code and that use. So I don't necessarily think that the Planning Commission can use the potential of somebody not using it as a commercial parking lot as a reason to say no to it. I think you have to give the applicant the chance to prove that they're going to meet the code, and if they don't, then it's on us to enforce it.
So can I ask the applicant, do you intend to meet the requirements of the code for a commercial parking lot?
The intent of this parking is for members during business hours. And they pay fees to the credit union, and that we felt like met the commercial intent. If we had another way of doing this, we would have, this was our only option based on discussions with planning staff. But we did not want to lose parking. We needed to gain them to create a more safe environment for members coming and going.
So, Nick, I mean, this is a hard one, that this is the only option to get somebody where they need to be. Is the new parking codes going to address this?
Same time, the city council established parking with a goal in mind, and who knows what these numbers will end up being. An intentional decision by the city council. We can only look at what's adopted now in this case. We have to assume that the city set the parking requirements as what they are.
And this is a reminder, it's a conditional use, so we don't have as much choice in making decisions on those things, unless there's impacts that can't be mitigated.
But I think the discussion is around whether or not it even qualifies to be a conditional use in this zone. So do we have an exact definition of a commercial? Do we need that? I feel like we need that. Oh, so read it again for me.
I mean, while he's looking for that, there have been times that we've had to deal with conditional uses where it was really apparent that the use was not going to be. I remember distinctly when there was a rental that was coming through, and I asked, for those of you who were here, I asked the guy who was here who the name of the person who was renting a room from.
Remember that?
And he could not name the name of who he was renting a room to prove that he actually lived in the facility. But I was not allowed to use that to deny the conditional use. So it wouldn't be the first time that, knowing that the use was not intended, that we did not have grounds to argue that.
So here's the definition. A surface lot or structure used for parking or storage of automobiles, generally available to the public and involving payment of a charge for such parking or storage.
Someone, be bold.
I mean, I don't think we have a choice. I mean, I'll make a motion. Based on the testimony plans presented in the following findings, I move that the Planning Commission deny the conditional use request for Mountain America Credit Union commercial parking lot due to the fact that it is not a commercial parking lot and does not qualify for conditional use consideration. And this is for PLN PCM 2019-00424.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Huh? Start on that side?
Maureen, can I ask just a clarifying thing? I think it's important to note that one of the basis for the decision is the testimony from the applicant who said there will not be,
right,
that they're not charging a fee for the parking.
Agreed. Do I need to state that, or can I just?
I just
say
want to
yes?
make sure that
Yes,
that's part
I
of
mean,
the
that's
reasoning
exactly.
Hey, but
yes.
can,
But the
is there
applicant-
still time for discussion? I mean,
Yep.
okay, so I think, Matt, you and I are going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
You're welcome to.
Just, maybe we're going to say the same thing. I don't understand why a fee to, I mean, the bank is charging them fees for being a member. I don't understand why that can't include parking. That, to me, as he's reading it, I'm like, check, check. That sounds to me like a commercial lot. So I'm surprised.
Except it says payment of a charge for such parking or storage, not the fees they charge me for being a member.
But my fees, there are a lot of fees I get charged for that include a lot of things from a lot of businesses, and I only take advantage of some of them. You know, so if parking is included in that, I don't have a problem, but it looks to me like I'm the only one.
Well,
I'm surprised.
Well, I guess I just question if that is our role to decide that, if that's not enforcement. Enforcement decides if that meets the qualifications, not us. Right? Is that what you're basically saying? That?
Technically, you don't enforce, but
No, I know we don't. but
Planning
it-
Commission does have a role when it comes to conditional uses that are not complying with the conditions or not following the use. And that is that the Planning Commission and the mayor both have the power to revoke a conditional use permit.
So then hypothetically, Matt could have voted against the guy who clearly wasn't living there because he had reason.
Let's bring that man back.
I
let's stay on
don't know
this.
the specifics of the case he's talking about.
You
I
missed
don't.
out. It was good. It was good.
Sounds like
Question for the applicant. How do you feel about this if we were to move it through as a conditional use permit and approve it, and it's now in an enforcement situation? You go through and you build this out, and it's now an enforcement situation, and your neighbors complain, right? Pushing the city to take action, then the city then needs to make that decision, and you're in a limbo spot, right? Whether or not, and you've invested all this money into building this thing, right? I mean, how does it make you feel? But like, respond to that problem for me. I mean, is that and you may not be the right person to ask whether or not it's an acceptable business. I mean, all businesses take risks, right? But you know, is that your risk of essentially having the city come in because, you know, people have leverage over you and say this doesn't meet the conditional use and the city needs to take it away?
I think the credit union would be willing to take that risk. They
Go to
need.
court.
Pardon me?
You could go to court over defending that
Absolutely.
this is a commercial parking lot.
From my perspective, we've done a number of these. This is going to be a huge improvement to that site and to the neighborhood. The commercial parking is used for that business, so in my mind, it meets that definition. And they need that number to do business. They have that many cars coming into that property now. And I think the credit union would be absolutely willing to
Take that risk.
take that risk.
No, I mean, I think you've done a nice job, and I appreciate the density of vegetation and what you've done for I think for the neighbors, you've done, what you can to help mitigate that impact of a drive-through and stuff, and I appreciate that. To the chair.
Sure, why don't you come up and introduce yourself at the microphone?
Address or anything?
No.
No, okay. In answer to your question, Matt, we would be willing to take that risk. I think looking hypothetically, say there were complaints from neighbors, at that point we're just required to probably charge for that lot, and we would charge a very minimal fee. Like Shane said, I mean, if there was another way to do this, we would be happy to do that. And our neighbors are our members, that's our community. So we want to please them as best as we can. And we're definitely conscientious of the comments that were made by the neighbors tonight, and we'll do our best to work with them and make sure that hopefully those complaints never arise to where it would be a code enforcement issue.
So let me clarify. If pushed, you would charge for parking, even if it was very nominal. You have a bowl of pennies and you're charging a penny to park. You would charge if that's really what you would had to do.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then just a question for staff: if we move this forward, I mean, the designs with the vegetation barriers, the fence, since I think that's a key component, this is they have to keep to this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, and then the construction hours thing, is that something that we can put into a condition or no?
I'm going to say generally no, because it's not related to the use. The construction's going to happen, right? And it's part of that. The county already has noise ordinances and things like that regulate hours of construction equipment and things like that. And so there's already some things in place. For example, even at like the state level, if they're doing highway construction and they want to work after hours, they have to get special permits and things like that from, I don't know who actually grants the states the permits, but they have to get special approval, I think, from the local county health department to work outside those hours and things. So,
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Should we take a vote?
Madam Chair, I'll offer a substitute motion.
Thank you.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the testimony just provided by the bank manager, and his opinions, the staff's opinion, or this credit union, sorry, not credit union.
You can get me fired, I swear.
Because these seem like really awful people who are looking to game the system.
I'm kidding.
But based on the information in the staff report, I move the Planning Commission approve PLN PCM 2019-00424 regarding Mountain America conditional credit use with the following modifications, and the list of the conditions to be modified. With the conditions listed in the staff report.
Okay, do we have a second for the substitute?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. Any objection to the substitute motion? Okay, we'll vote on the substitute motion. Andres?
My vote has not changed since the beginning, actually, so yes.
Adrian?
No.
Amy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Sarah?
Yes.
Weston?
I still think we have trouble with the intent of the code, so I'm going to say no.
And Matt?
Yes.
They voted in favor. It's 5-2. So you guys got the conditional use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have a work session about the fleet block. Daniel?
Okay. So,
Would you please take your discussion outside? There's plenty of room to talk in the hall if you want.
okay. So I'm here to give you a briefing on the fleet block rezone. and get your initial feedback on the proposal, the direction we're taking the proposal. So I'll start with where is the fleet block. The fleet block is located between 800 and 900 south and between 300 and 400 west. The fleet block is named that because the city had their fleet maintenance facility on this site since the 20s. And they finally left this site in 2010 when we built a new facility toward the west side of the city. So there's been no city functions going on this property. There is a corner piece of this block. It's about 2.5 acres. It's also privately owned. That's also being incorporated into this rezone. So what we're looking at is rezoning the entire block, not just the city-owned property. So again, the city moved their operations to a new facility, left this vacant. Since that time, the city's been looking and exploring options to sell the property. Hasn't been sold yet. The zoning in place wouldn't support redevelopment for the city's portion of the block. The city's portion of the block is zone PL, which is public lands, which is intended for public facilities. So it wouldn't allow for what the downtown plan envisions as a mixed-use residential commercial mix on the property. So we need to look at rezoning the property as something that would support what the master plan says should be going on here. Additionally, the 2.5 acres in the corner of the property that's privately owned is zone CG. CG does allow for private development. It could allow for mixed-use development, but the CG zone, which is general commercial, has no design standards at all. It just has bulk standards. So you have setbacks, you have heights, that's it. So that's why we're also looking at rezoning that portion of the block in this whole rezone. So when we look at what to rezone a property, we do look at the master plan to get guidance about how to rezone the property. So the downtown plan has a specific paragraph all about the fleet block. It talks about demonstrating the best of urban family living and industry on the site, a mix of land uses, once thought to be incompatible, and improved connections, which means mid-block connections on the block. And the zoning changes would support a true mix of housing options, including townhomes, reuse of historic buildings, and mid-rise development. So we look at that in formulating what the zoning should look like on this property. So we looked at the surrounding context. To the east of the property is the Form-Based Urban Neighborhood 2 zone, which allows for mixed-use development and residential, but it's fairly low scale. It goes to 65 feet at the corners, but generally it's limited to 50 foot of height. We also look next door, which is the D2 zone, and D2 zoning changes have come through the Planning Commission. They haven't been adopted yet, but they incorporated a bunch of design standards into the D2 zone. The problem with the D2 zone is it allows outdoor car sales lots, which isn't envisioned by the master plan for this property or the surrounding area. And the D2 zone doesn't allow townhomes, and the master plan specifically calls out allowing townhome development here. So because of that, we looked at the form-based code, which generally meets much of the things that the master plan is calling for, with some modifications. So what we're proposing is the Form-Based Urban Neighborhood 3 zone. And it is slightly based on the Form-Based Urban Neighborhood 2 zone that's to the east. The key things are that it allows mid-rise heights as called for the master plan. This gets us density and intensity in active urban neighborhood. It also has design controls.
Can you give a height to what that mid-rise is?
So the downtown, yeah. So the downtown plan doesn't define specifically what mid-rise is, but it does essentially imply it's lower than the high-rise that you see downtown. So you're getting like 300-foot tall buildings in the downtown core, but it is higher than the lower scale development. That could be townhomes. Generally in a downtown context, it's probably a little taller than townhomes. So there's a range. There's no specific number. So in our minds, the mid-rise.
So are we not putting a height limit?
We are putting a height limit.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so how are you defining mid-rise?
So we're looking at somewhere in between, around 100 feet. Generally seems like a mid-rise sort of development.
In When Molly was here and did like her like thing, it's like this whole vision that we were like this pyramid of something, which is this own weird deal, but that's what the vision was. And so like, does that fit the pyramid of like Salt Lake City?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There actually is a height map in the downtown plan that does add some context to what mid-rise is. Let me find it real quick and I can weigh in on that while Daniel, it might actually not take me that long. It might be pretty quick here. Yeah, just keep going.
Okay.
And I'll track it.
I don't want to get on. So if we look directly to the east,
Mhm.
that is capping them at 50.
So pull that map up. So the center of the block, see if I can
I was
do a
looking at
little-
on that on one of those pages. There's different colors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the green is, well, in this particular one I'm looking at on Adrian's screen, the green is 50 feet, which is east.
Yes, but the corners, which isn't, it's not illustrated here, but the corners here allow up to 65 feet.
Right.
Yes.
So those allow to 65 feet, and then you go down. It feels like you're gonna have low, high, because then it's 90 feet west of it.
Yes,
Right.
there's kind of a stepping and then it kind of steps down. Yeah, so you will have a peak next to 300 West.
But so you would only potentially get 125 feet in this block alone.
Right
and
now.
everything else would be.
So I should add some more context to this. We are designing this to expand out into the granary because the CG zone, again, has no design standards. And if this was expanded out, the heights allowed in those properties would also be 125 feet.
So, I mean, I know I should let you finish, but
You're okay.
so are those properties that are currently going up to like 90 feet that are in this orange?
Yes.
Those are all CG right
All
now?
CG, yes.
How far does that CG go?
All the way to the freeway.
Okay.
So that's 3 or 4
Right,
blocks.
yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Let's go. The other key thing here is the design controls of the form-based zone. There's a number of controls that would result in high-quality appearance of buildings and pedestrian street engagement. Another key thing is the mix of uses. The downtown plan calls for the residential mixed with some industry, recognizing that's what's going on here in the granary area, and they could be compatible with design controls. So with a form-based code, you first start with a building form type, and then with that you have bulk controls on setbacks and height, design standards, windows, glass, building materials. You have the standard land uses, streetscape improvements, and then parking and signs as well.
Yeah, so
You're
can
okay.
you, because I'll forget and then
That's
I'll
fine.
do that myself. So can you define in that form-based code what in the neighborhood, urban neighborhood 3, what are the standards for parking? Especially in relationship to like big surface parking lots. What are those standards?
So there is no minimum requirement for parking, just first off, for any uses here. There is a maximum, and the maximum essentially is double what the minimum requirement is. So if you had an office with 3 stalls per 1,000 feet allowed, you could go up to six stalls for that use. As far as
So what decides like the 3 stalls per 1,000 feet? Is that going to be like the parking chapter?
that's in the parking chapter,
Okay.
yes, yes. And then as far as just jumping ahead a little bit with the parking, we will have locational restrictions for the parking as well. So there's not in front of the building.
Okay, because I want to ensure that whatever goes on doesn't allow for like that big interior surface parking lot that may arise, that we don't end up with a scenario where that could be possible.
Gotcha. Okay. So the major component of a form-based code is the building form types. In this case, we have generally 3 forms that we're proposing to allow. One is the row house or a townhome. And again, that goes back to the downtown master plan policies. The next one is actually 3 different types, but they're fairly similar. So I've grouped them here. It's mixed use building, a multifamily building, and a storefront building. And regarding the downtown plan, that goes back to having mixed use, active, urban, mid-rise scale development. The other one that's kind of unique to this is limited bay. In the downtown plan, it calls about industrial and mixing of uses. So a limited bay form is supposed to be reflective of the industrial buildings that are in this area. So it would allow for a one loading bay on the front, recognizing that's what industrial uses often need and have on the front of their buildings. There would be a trade-off with that loading bay, and I'll get to that on the next couple slides. But that is a unique form proposed as part of this. As far as height standards, bulk standards for a row house, it's the lowest scale of the building forms, up to 40 feet of height. It has an open space requirement, recognizing that residential uses need open space. It does allow for greater setbacks than the other building forms, recognizing that you may want a front yard with a townhome.
Why limit a row house to 40 feet? People don't like, I mean, there's a lot of stairs in the house, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, but why, I mean, presumably why would we do it? rather
Yeah,
than
in
an
an
architect?
urban context, it may not make as much sense here to have a height limit. Naturally, with a row house, you're probably not going to get something over 3 or 4 feet, or
Almost
3 or
stories,
4
yeah.
stories. But we originally were considering, would we limit it to 30 feet? 30 feet has run into problems because people want to do a deck on top, and they can't do it if we limit it on 30 feet, so we put it at 40 feet. But height limit may not make sense, potentially. As far as the bulk standards for limited bay and mixed-use multifamily, so it's a little small, but the limited bay, it does allow for that loading dock on the front of the building. The trade-off with that would be there would be a height limitation of 50 feet for the building, and any portions taller than that 50 feet would have to be set back and would have to go to the Planning Commission for review. And that, again, is tried to reflect the nearby industrial building context, where they're generally not taller than 50 feet. The highest allowance is the mixed-use multifamily storefront buildings. It would allow 85 feet just by right. Higher than that to 125 would have to come to the commission for a review. Because the
Okay, so that 85 feet by right, would that require ground floor retail and then apartments? Or could you just get 85 if you did solely residential?
If you did, right now under the current code, you could just do solid residential. It would have to have a base with entry features.
So if you did like a real mixed use and had retail on the bottom, would that get you above 85?
You'd still have to go through a process.
Still have to go through the process.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive height-wise for somebody to come in and do like a real mixed use in this proposal.
Not under the current proposal. No, there's no incentive.
Okay. I feel like you might want to look at that.
Could you have a full office building? It's just office in this zone?
You could, yes.
Yeah, I feel like you want to look at that because if we're trying to look at what we want to create there, I mean, if they all become office or they all become stay industrial, then you just kind of still end up with these dead zones. Like at some point at night, they're all gone,
Yeah.
and there's nothing happening. So you have potential dead zones with then residential, and you're not creating that synergy. And so
We do
you may
have
not want a
similar-
24/7 type of a thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
some incentive to bring some of that true mixed use there. And an office could be a component of it, but like having a, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think you want to look at that.
Yeah, and we have similar, not incentives, but regulations in the Sugar House zone that essentially don't allow other uses. But so as far as design standards, you've seen 2 proposals with design standards come through: the Sugar House Business District Zone and the D2 zone. These design standards that are in place in the code right now are very similar to the design standards for those zones. It covers entryway installation. You have to choose and install certain entryway features in your building. There's glass minimums, blank wall limits, building material minimums. In this one, there's a couple unique ones of balcony requirements for residential units on taller buildings. There's the same parking structure design standards we have for our other zones. And there's also a unique thing as a build-to alternative. In the form-based code, you are required to build up to the sidewalk. Generally, it's within 5 or 10 feet. The build-to line alternative allows people to potentially put in a active restaurant patio up to the sidewalk in lieu of having the building face right up to the sidewalk. It allows for some flexibility for those sorts of active uses.
Well, building length.
Under the form-based code, it is 200 feet existing currently in place.
In all form-based zones?
For all form-based zones, yeah. So the other unique thing here is the proposed land uses. It's pretty broad. The intent is that the design standards would limit any negative impacts. You wouldn't get the perhaps old school industrial buildings maybe that are metal prefab buildings putting up with outdoor uses that could cause noise and light impacts. So at the lowest intensity, you could have townhomes, multifamily residential, middle, bars, restaurants, office, retail, breweries. Highest, you could go with industrial assembly, which is putting pre-assembled parts together, and light manufacturing, which this manufacturing with no external noise, light, exhaust, and indoors. So there are limits, but it is fairly unique. The other general components of the zoning would be the parking, streetscape, and sign requirements. There would be driveway and parking location limits. Parking would be limited to the side of a building behind the front facade or totally behind the building. There's the wider sidewalk requirement. Generally, the commercial zones only require 5 or 6 feet. We would require 8 feet for this area. Street trees, every 30 feet is a pretty standard requirement. The other unique thing is mid-block walkways. The downtown plan maps out where mid-block walkways should be in this area, and in the zoning code, it would require someone to actually dedicate or build a mid-block walkway through their development if it's shown on their property on the downtown master plan. As far as sign allowances go, it's very similar to existing form-based zones, and there are some of our downtown zones. And just to tell you what the public process has been so far, we had an open house July 8th. We actually had a lot of people come to that, which we were really happy about. There were about 50 people. We had it right across the street from Art Space, right on the west side of the Fleet Block. We are going to publish a draft of the full code for public feedback and send it out to everyone that gave us their contact information at the open house. We expect to make changes, and we'd bring this back to the commission later in the fall with those changes. The intent is to come back with a proposal for a recommendation.
So I'm just wondering, why aren't you going to rezone all of the CG west of here as well? Just since it seems like we'll just have such a mishmash right now.
We considered it, but the Fleet Block is like a priority site to get the zoning in place so we can actually sell the property. It's been, I think, 9 years now since it's remained vacant. And expanding this out to the rest of the CG could cause other issues and other things we need to look at with this zoning. So in order to keep this simplified, we've restricted it just to the Fleet Block. See if it works. If it works, we move forward with expanding it out to the rest of the granary.
The other reason for that is we just don't have the staff capacity to do that work right now. So
Daniel does everything.
well, I know, and we rely on Daniel to do everything too much.
I just think if we wait too long, we are not going to be moving the granary forward.
And we don't plan on waiting too long. We want to get this in place and almost immediately start with the rest of it. But because it includes such a big area, it's something like 26 blocks or something like that.
Yeah.
So many property owners and businesses that we'd have to talk to and figure things out with that it's going to take months and months and months of engagement to deal with that. And so that's why we decided to focus this for now and then move. And it may be that some of the granary isn't appropriate for this, right? And so we have to figure those things out still.
Right, I definitely think CG is not going to get us good development in the granary, but I don't want to wait too long to tackle this part that's west
Yeah,
of
we,
the Fleet
we,
Block.
we actually, once we get this to the council, we actually plan on taking the next step.
And just for additional context, this zoning proposal isn't the end-all be-all for the development on the city's portion of the block. Once the zoning is in place, the city can then sell the property, but generally the city, as part of the sale, further controls what the development will look like, can attach all sorts of conditions on the development. So there could be other things.
Yeah, so do you just sell the property outright, or do you do a request for proposal?
So last I heard, the plan was to go out to basically parcelize the city-owned piece, get the streets in place, the mid-block connections, and then go out for, we call them RFQs, to get qualifications and proposals for
RFQ.
each site. So we'll set some parameters about what should happen.
Oh, so
and
you're
then-
probably not looking for an RFQ for the whole block, but for
It
components
could be
of it?
that. Those decisions haven't been fully made yet.
Okay.
So that's all of my presentation. I'm happy to take feedback, more questions.
Daniel, you kind of just answered my question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway because it was in my head. I have to get it out. If the city continues to have control, that's great because I think, it is such an opportunity with such a big parcel to do something cool with it. And I think the form-based code has the potential to do that. But it feels like, it also has the potential to just be a whole bunch of townhouses, right?
If the city didn't have any control,
Right.
And that was the highest and best use for the developer found, or the buyer found, then.
And is
it's
that
possible.
sort of the point, is to offer that flexibility so that the economy sort of drives what it is in that space?
Yes. Yeah. But again, the downtown plan does specifically call for townhomes.
Sure.
A mix of potential housing options. Townhomes generally accommodate family living better than an
I
apartment.
love townhouse. I was saying how much I love townhouses earlier, right?
You just want to buy that block. I know.
But I just think that it is a cool space, and I love the form-based code. I actually think it does have the potential to create just a mix of everything in an area, but it also feels like it has the potential to potentially be a little ho-hum with being just maybe townhouses and residential spaces, and then that's it, because it doesn't seem to set the base as high as I think I would want it to be.
Well, I think that's one reason why I suggested doing some incentives,
Yeah.
incentivizing to get a real mixed use, so that it didn't become this just.
Then you really have the ability to create a neighborhood, an entirely new, distinct part of the city, because it is one landowner on one large block. Whatever happens there can define what happens
Totally.
everywhere else in that area. It could be another sugar house or another place that you really could define, that defines a certain area.
Yeah.
Hopefully the city does more than just
Um,
builds Weston's townhouse.
Well, and I'm less concerned that they'll build my townhouse only because it does because of this. It is the city's property. But like if we were changing the whole area into this, I think that would make me a little bit nervous.
So that is part of the point, though. In allowing townhouses, it would allow that elsewhere in the
Okay.
granary, not necessarily on this site in particular, because the way we wrote it was with the potential of it being expanded to a greater area, and potentially maybe some of these other areas in the granary wouldn't work as well for a large scale development. Maybe a townhome works better.
Well, and likely, I'm guessing a whole block is not going to be redeveloped together. This is like the only block that the whole block is going to be potentially developed at the same time, which, right? Oh, really? Okay, well then I have concerns. Is there any way to? Are we okay with having a whole block of townhouses? Is that okay?
I'm okay.
I don't know. Maybe we are okay with that. I don't know.
If that's what the demand is, I'm okay.
Yeah, but if
with
we
it.
incentivize multiple views of how to use it, then you may yield
Yeah.
not a whole block of townhomes. If we don't incentivize that opportunity to diversify what goes in there, then maybe you get a stronger leaning towards all townhomes. So incentivizing it isn't directing that. It has to not be townhomes, but that if a developer wants a certain parcel, whatever, and they feel like they could do something else on it, they have some incentives built into whatever to do something different, to mix it up. My hope is that doing it that way would yield a real mixed use approach.
And we can look at incentives, other examples, see if other areas, other zones elsewhere potentially allow low scale and high scale, and they incentivize higher scale developments with mixes of uses. We can look at that.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we also want to take our time to make sure that the zoning works for the district as a whole, so that we can do that. One of the things that there are a number of cities, the first that comes to mind is Vancouver, which has managed to utilize a number of townhomes in their walkable core, but they use them to help space out their towers so that they're not constantly shading
Can we get
everybody.
a field trip there? To see that?
Let's ask the council for some money.
So what does the master plan call for in that western portion? Much of the same? Because you said the master plan specifically talks about the fleet block. What does it talk about for the other portion?
It's similar language about the rest of it. Yeah, a mix of that paragraph could also be applied to the rest of the
the rest of
granary.
it?
Yeah,
So-
given the other language in that section.
So then I think that's, appropriate to look at how are we going to direct real mixed use throughout, and then the developer can decide what's really appropriate, what they think really works for that particular spot or parcel, but that we are making it a lively place. And you don't make it a lively place if you just have all townhomes. To a degree. To a degree. Maybe not by the master plan, not by.
Baltimore, it's an entire city of row houses.
I know, I was just thinking of towards
of
how the
rats.
master plan is written and the things they're calling out for. I don't think you would achieve the visions of the master plan if you just had townhomes.
I intended it to be part of the public comment.
Just one example is across the street, the Form-Based Urban Neighborhood 2 zone. It allows for multifamily up to 50 feet, 65 feet, and we still have gotten townhome development. And that may just be what the market is asking for.
Well, I have to think about it a little bit more, I think.
Okay.
I think you've done a good job. I think it's exciting. I think it's
That
cool.
is exciting.
Yeah, thanks for putting it together.
Fun to see
Appreciate
this
it.
get developed.
Yeah.
And I'd remove the minimum height.
You what?
And the
Sorry.
minimum height I'd remove, and then
For the townhomes.
And I think that I do think this idea of keeping it at D2 or lower for the maximum height seems to make sense, just given the overall master plan that was laid out by modeling the downtown sort of stuff that we were here when we approved that. But the rest of it looks great.
Great.
So it's actually in the urban design element where it talks about mid-rise development. This is the old urban design element that still
91.
is an adopted plan, but basically it, see, I told you I'd find it. 6 to 12 stories basically is what it says mid-rise is.
That is this range. Yeah.
Anything else for Daniel?
This is informational, but there's going to be plenty more opportunities for you.
You have a proposal for me?
Oh my gosh.
Better have a rooftop deck. And I want a commercial parking lot in the back.
Nice.
Just to tie it all together.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right, that's
Nice
it.
presentation.
Okay.
I think we're done here. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.